Deep Threat Sports Network, welcome back. I'm here with the Crease to Crease gang, and we are fired up to be back and do this again for our second episode. We are wrapping up the first 3 weeks in the NHL season so far. Had crazy storylines, incredible starts, historically bad starts, some really hard hitting, and some heavy scoring hockey matchups. This has been exciting as it gets to start a season. As you see here, we're welcoming back Marty this week. You guys are familiar with him from the Splash and Go podcast, and we have a full panel for you here on Crease to Crease. And this could not be better. Exciting stuff for you guys. Make sure you're tuning in. These guys here know hockey, and we cannot wait to talk about it. But on this week's episode, we're going to dive into our weekly highlight and updates from the last week. We have best matchups on tap this coming week, some injury updates, and, of course, our milestone updates. And we're going to also refresh our picks from last week and update you guys on what Marty has in store for you guys as well. But first, real quick, we're going to kick it over to Josh. He's going to give you our weekly injury update this week. So, Josh, what do we have on tap with some injuries that just happened this past week?
So this week, Dunn's out. He's got an upper body injury. He's been kind of a support beam for Seattle as of late. So, and he's a former Blue. You don't really want to see that. He had a lot of problems in the locker room here, but he's out with an upper body injury. I think he's slated to come back in a week or two. Celebrini, the Sharks' number one guy, he was drafted number one. He's out right now. He's got a lower body injury. I think they're calling that maybe like 3 to 4 weeks, maybe a little bit less. Barkov is day-to-day. Declares out 4 to 6 weeks with a leg injury, which is pretty detrimental. Blues have Nicoletti coming back this week. We kind of really need him. I don't know if you guys watched the game on Saturday, but we need him. Thomas is out with a broken ankle. It's not looking good. I think they're calling for beginning of December for him coming back. So somebody who should probably be out a little longer than day to day is Justin Barron, because Jacob Trouba tried to kill him this week. I don't know if you guys saw that.
The hammer.
But
The hammer.
I'm surprised the guy got back up. Also, the Pens lost Rust mid-game this weekend against, was it Vancouver they were playing? Yeah, it was Vancouver. They lost him mid-game. He's day-to-day right now. So those are kind of the heavy hitters that are out and injured right now.
Man, Russ just seems to not stay healthy. Marty, go ahead, man. If you got something that you want to talk about here with which one of these injuries you think are the most important or detrimental, hit us with it.
Yeah, just real quick, just a quick introduction. You guys know me from the Splash and Go podcast. I'm Marty. I actually played hockey for 13 years locally here in the St. Louis area. I absolutely adore hockey, especially the goaltending position. I was a goaltender for 13 years. But if I'm looking at these injuries, the one that I really want to point out, and that's just because I laid a lot of eyes on him for a lot of years, is Vince Dunn there in Seattle. That's definitely a detriment, because I remember when he was taken out in the playoffs, we went on our cup run there, you immediately noticed his absence, and you immediately noticed when he was back. And you heard a lot of the analysts talk about it at that time. He's a player that maybe you don't notice him night in and night out. Maybe he's not the flashiest. He doesn't always look like Cale Makar out there. But he is definitely somebody who I think that the Kraken's going to notice is missing in their lineup. And when he comes back, they're immediately going to notice his presence on the blue line there. He is so good at keeping those borderline 50-50 pucks in along the blue line there. I always thought that was one of his strong points. His skating ability was good. But he was so good at those 50-50 pucks along the blue line, those keep-ins. And he's, a very good mover of the puck. So that's one that sticks out to me that I'm kind of going, yeah, that hurts a little bit for the Seattle Kraken.
Yeah, Ron, go ahead if you got anything you want to add or any big injuries for you. Marty, I do agree with you real quick. Vince Dunn was a guy that didn't light up the stat sheet, but he was a hard-nosed hockey player, played the puck well, and was hard to get off the puck as well. So I totally agree with you. But, Ron, what do you got for us, buddy?
Well, I just maybe touch on a couple of the ones that Josh mentioned. The loss of Robert Thomas is going to be huge. Thankfully, the Blues did get Sundqvist back last week, which adds a little bit of depth there. Just going to have some guys step in and fill that role for the next month and a half, and hope he can get back healthy here in about 6 weeks. The additional Letty is going to be good. I guess I just want to comment. Jacob Trouba. I mean, I haven't seen anybody hit that hard since Scott Stevens played in the league. Right? He's just an absolute animal, and heads up around that guy. Right?
It was a clean hit.
Clean
People were
hit, and
talking
that's
about
and
how
that's
it
the
was a
thing.
dirty hit and he lifted the elbow.
I
And
thought it was clean. No, I thought it was
Clean as it gets,
absolutely.
man.
It seems like every time he hammers somebody, there's always a debate around whether it was clean or not. And most of the time it is. The guy he's an absolute machine.
Yeah,
So
he hits through people. So I mean, they always
He
talk
does.
about how you don't, you finish your checks, and what they mean by finishing your check is that you said this saying that along the boards you don't try to hit somebody into the boards, you try to hit them through the boards. It's key that when you drop your shoulder that you finish your check, and that's definitely somebody you're going to have to watch to finish your checks there. But yeah,
Heads up, pun intended.
Exactly, it does kind of give you the shades of Scott Stevens out there. Who can forget the Scott Stevens, Paul Correa debacle? I think that was in the 03 or 04 finals there.
Yeah, and there's a code amongst these guys. They're not out with intent to injure. This is the way he plays the game, and head on a swivel when he's on the ice. And most of the time they're clean hits, but unfortunately, they had some folks injured from that, and that's part of the game, right? So
hey, this is hockey, man.
it's in the rule book.
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up because I actually would like to talk about that a little bit. So the speed of the game's increasing, and you're seeing a lot of these injuries happen more often, or you're seeing people line people up. Anymore, the game's so fast, especially since they've gotten rid of the 2-line pass rule in the neutral zone. It really frees up a lot of space. So you have a lot of these players that line somebody up. And once you're committed, you're kind of committed. You can't really – it's hard for these players to pull back and kind of hit the brakes when they've lined somebody up, because then you're getting burned and now there's an odd-man break going on behind you. So the thing that I don't think that gets talked enough about in this league was you have all these late man in and these instigator rules in this league. This used to be a lot more self-policing league where if you did line up a huge hit on a key player, you're gonna get in a fight at some point in that game. And also another thing that I don't think that gets talked enough about is the actual player equipment itself. So, I mean, we've all seen the pictures and really up until the 90s, you saw most of these people were playing with deer hair stuffed shoulder pads that you didn't have a whole lot there. I mean, your chest protector came to, it didn't protect all your ribs. Everybody was all about movement. They wanted all that free space. And then, you started getting into the 2000s, and I'll never forget the first youth hockey player I saw walk in the locker room. They were wearing the more, solid plastic football players style shoulder pads. And I thought, there's no way. I mean, there's no way that'll become a trend because it looked like it restricted so much movement. But these players started getting used to it. I think that back a few years ago when you were wearing the more deer stuff shoulder pads, when you line somebody up to really hit them hard, you're knowing going into that this was going to hurt me too. You had to kind of do a risk reward to kind of sit there and say, man, this guy's really hauling ass to the neutral zone. I got him lined up. Am I really going to fall through with a check? Because, I mean, it used to hurt pretty bad. Now, all these hockey players are units, but they're wearing these football style hard plastic shoulder pads. I think if the NHL wants to look at some of these injuries, especially and I don't think you have a lot of players that go out there and head hunt, but it happens because you have to commit so early to make these hits.
Tom Wilson.
Plays that yeah, but sometimes these things happen.
And Marty, let's give credit to the league. With Bettman being around for 2+ decades and Bill Daly, they cleaned that part of the game up years ago, and it's opened the game up, to your point, but it's also limited the amount of head injuries, concussions, like the Lindros. His career was shortened, right? Stevens lit him up one time, and that was not a clean hit. He caught him in the head, but the league has really
it was clean for the time. It was clean for the time.
Yeah, but they've taken that part of that, taking a run of the guy out of the game, and I think that's a win for not only the superstars but for the fans as well who want to see him play.
Yeah.
Hey, the last time I saw a player take a run at somebody was in the 2019 Stanley Cup when Robert Thomas got stretchered off the rink from his now teammate.
Torrey Krug, right? Yeah,
just absolutely lit him up. I mean, that was
He somehow hurt his wrist in that collision, and I don't even know how that happened. I would have thought it would have been his skull or his neck or something. But no, he's like, my wrist.
His spine. But hey, let's talk a little bit more about this Robert Thomas injury just a little bit. We're all locally from St. Louis. It's a St. Louis-based show. We're all St. Louis Blues fans. So Robert Thomas averaging almost a point a game, obviously early in the season, now that he's hurt, was fantastic on faceoffs, was really starting to, I feel like, really kind of come into his own a little bit more. I mean, we've been talking for years about how, hey, man, you need to take this next step. You have all the talent in the world. We need you to play every single night, not take nights off. And I really thought he was starting to come into that this year. So maybe I don't know, maybe I'm over exaggerating a little bit, but I think this is probably one of the biggest injuries the Blues could have next to Jordan Bennington going out, in my opinion. I mean, does anybody agree or disagree? I mean, this is just how I feel about it. When I saw that, I was like, man, it's going to be a really long 6 weeks for a team that really already kind of struggled with top, top 6 skaters on the team. And you're really missing your key guy, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean, that was always the next step he needed to take was, can he play a full season? Because we all knew that he was on the verge of being an elite player in this league. And I thought last season, they talked about in the offseason, I think he put on 5 pounds of muscle. Like, he bulked up a little bit and he really put in a great full season. And you just hate to see this because he comes off of, of a really good, solid full season. Kind of gets that elite status, in my opinion. At least Marty, an elite status on the St. Louis Blues.
Marty,
and now he's injured again. It hurts.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I happen to know from a good friend of mine that Robert Thomas was doing some serious personal training over the summer, and you could see it in the way he plays. He's stronger, he's bigger. It is going to be a huge loss, Collin. We just got to hope some guys can step up and fill that role, right?
Yeah, they brought Brandon Saad back up to kind of help fill that role and stuff like that, and
he's playing pretty good too.
He's got 2 goals right now.
Yeah.
He's only 2 games, 2 goals.
He had a great setup to Holloway the other night. That backhand pass across the crease. That was nice.
I think we kind of right now are going to kind of have to lean on these younger guys a little bit. Guys like Jake Neighbors and stuff like that. Have to lean on these guys a little bit until we get them back.
Yeah, we definitely need guys to step up too. And one thing that goes unrecognized by most, people that just tune in and watch a hockey game is Robert Thomas was leading the forwards in all of time on ice. I mean, that's a big loss there. He was a guy that was very well conditioned, could really give you 20 plus minutes a night. So just a really big loss. And I wanted to touch on that a little bit more to give credit on that because
I could be wrong, but I think he was leading the league in faceoff percentage for centers, man, by a wide margin. Yes. I mean, we always ask here in St. Louis, like, man, that's the one thing we're losing in O'Reilly. Who's going to take over that role? Right, being a solid face-off
bingo
guy, because that is a part of the game that is so important, especially now. The metrics are all about puck possession. I mean, that's what winning teams do now is they have that puck possession time, and the most important part of that is winning face-offs.
I think the most underrated stat for centers is face-off wins. It is something that, to your point, Marty, that does not go talked about. It helps you possess the puck. It helps you if you're in the advanced zone to possess the puck. Or hell, if you're on the defensive side of things, winning the puck and getting it out. So, I mean, you are spot on. This is why I think it's detrimental to the St. Louis Blues hockey team, in my opinion. I mean, just buckle up and hope for the best from here. But let's kind of move on a little bit. We could spend all day talking about the Blues and what they have coming. Let's transition a little bit into this last week and what every single one of us thought, was maybe a team trending in a positive direction, team trending in a negative direction. Let's really shed some light on that here. So, Josh, I'm going to kick it to you first. And why don't you go ahead and tell me a team that had your eye, or maybe even a player that had your eye in the last week since we met up last?
So, kind of looking at the Penguins and their road trip to Canada, it was pretty tough. They were 0-3 coming out of Canada. I think they've lost 4 games in a row, I think, right as of right now. We were talking last week about how, hey, this team, they were looking a little old, but, you had Malkin putting up points. He's looking like a stud. And on the other hand, you have Sidney Crosby's off to a slow start. Chris Letang, he almost isn't even there on the team. Also, their goaltending has just been a nightmare. I think their goals for was something, I think they have like 23 goals for, and I think they have like 43 goals against. I mean, it's just
they sent Jari down.
They did. They sent Jari down.
They sent him home, is what I read.
He was a healthy scratch, yeah.
They sent him home to get right.
So wow. And I don't know. He's got 2 more years on this contract this season and 2 more after this, and he's making almost $5.5 million a year. So I don't know if the contract and the money got to his head or what.
Well, he's a goalie, so he's crazy.
Yeah, there's some mental stuff going on there. I watched the Vancouver game and I watched Rust have that bad turnover and it led to a goal, and he got injured in the game and didn't return to the game. So you're kind of seeing these key players that we've been watching for all these years, and they're just kind of transparent. And the goaltending has got to get it under control. I really
So
don't
Josh,
know. Go ahead.
go ahead, but oh yeah, I was just gonna say let's shed a little bit more light on the Tristan Yari situation a little bit, because I know specifically times where I've had conversations with each one of you about Tristan Yari and how we thought he was a young, excellent, showed all signs of potential. And to your point, they paid him because of those things. And now we're sitting here looking at another goaltender that gets paid, that is starting to not pan out when all the talent in the world is there. Ron, I know you and I have spent tons of time as well talking about Tristan Yari. I mean, we were all over him last year. We talked on the last episode about how you and I have made, these picks forever with the Hart, Vezina, and Norris. And I'm pretty sure every year for like the last 2 or 3 years, one of us has probably picked Tristan Yari to win the Vezina, and now we're having a situation where we're packing his bag and sending him home to get his mind right. I mean, this is another Carey Price situation all over again.
I think you nail it with like it's being a mind game thing. I think he might be inside his own head, but it also doesn't help when your team's not putting up goals. These guys you could count on to keep you in the lead. Okay, I gave up a soft goal there. All right, it doesn't matter. I've got Sidney Crosby on my team. They even added Erik Karlsson to their defense, and I mean, that's a guy who should be able to lead that defense and push that defense to do their job right. So I do think it's kind of a mental game. I still think he's, a stud goaltender, but at some point you can't put that all on his back when these guys aren't putting pucks in the back of the net either.
No, that's a fair point, Josh. Good to know Pittsburgh struggle. Nedeljkovic's going to have to step up. Casey DeSmith's no longer there as a backup. He's in Dallas. Nedeljkovic's been in Carolina. I think Detroit. Good thing they signed him. He's had some shining moments, but when you get a guy that has to go home, Collin, it's just like we talked about with the $10 or $10.5 million contract, Carey Price. You mentioned him earlier. Cool. I think they labeled it chronic fatigue back then, but I think a lot of people speculated that was more mental, and maybe that's what Jari's going through. I don't know.
Yeah, it's tough. I think Carey Price actually did. He check himself into rehab too.
He did
around that time. So I mean, he was going through it, but this is not a symptom that is rare in goaltenders. I mean, it's oftentimes a lonely position, and when things aren't going your way, when you're not getting those bounces, it seems like as a goaltender, when it rains, it pours. So I agree with everything you guys are saying. I thought that Tristan Yari was one of the more underrated goaltenders in the league. The only times that I remembered him struggling was, he wasn't the strongest puck player at times, and he also at times played a little deep in his net, and sometimes he just didn't have his lateral movement. If you're not on your feet as a goaltender, sometimes you just don't have it. But he just looks like he's just getting lit up and is just not playing well at all this season. And yeah, they send you home. You guys are right. That's a good point to make. They send you home. They're wanting you to really regroup. I mean, they're just saying, hey, buddy, it's kind of like do or die time. You need to go home, you need to regroup, and you need to figure it out.
And Pittsburgh is 2 points out of the bottom in the Metro Division. Like you're not gonna win the cup in the first month of the season, but you can certainly put yourself in a hole. So if Nedeljkovic and some of the veterans, lose it. You can lose it. Like Letang and Crosby and Malkin and Erik Karlsson, they're gonna have to step up and support them and get through this little spot they're going through right now.
And I think, like the personal issues in the NHL, I think the NHL has been pretty transparent with a lot of that stuff, and so have the players. I mean, you had Pietrangelo leave last season. He's not a goaltender, but I'm just saying he had personal issues that he had to go address. Perron's out right now for Detroit, and apparently it's not an injury. Apparently there's some personal issues going on. Whether it's illness in the family or something, it's just like a normal job at some point. You got something in the back of your head, you're not going to be able to perform. It affects you in your professional setting on a day-to-day basis, and it builds up, and maybe these goaltenders, I mean, you're supposed to be a brick wall. You have the toughest job on the ice, in my opinion, and it's when your mental game's not there, it'll show.
I mean, yeah, goalies are known for being so weird. I mean, I had people that literally wouldn't room with me when we were on the road because we didn't want to room with a goaltender because we're so weird. I literally played hockey with a goaltender who, if you went to like McDonald's, you ate a French fry, the part that he touched with his finger, he would not eat. And he would hide food in his room under his bed so that nobody else could touch it. This is a common story. They're nuts. They take too many pucks to the head. and they're just crazy. So you have to take everything with a goaltender with a grain of salt. That's why when people ask me about Bennington, I'm like, dude, I've seen so much worse. He's an angel compared to some of the other crap I've seen out there.
I love it, man. So what we learned here in this situation is the Pens have got to find it, and they've got to find it quick because kind of like what you said, Ron, you were right. You cannot win the Stanley Cup in the first month, but in my opinion, you definitely can lose it in the first month, and they are trending in the wrong direction, and this team is old, and this is kind of one of those maybe make or break years where you're really running out of some time here. So they really need to find it here, and Tristan Jarry is probably the biggest key piece next to Sidney Crosby in that situation. So now we're going to talk a little bit, Ron. What was your team or your player or your highlights of this last week? What do you got your eyes set on?
Well, I'm going to go opposite direction than the team that's down and talk about the defending champs. Right? We didn't talk about them much in our first episode in Crease to Crease, but they've caught some wind. They're I think 5-2 in their last 7, and they're playing some decent teams and battling hard. They're 6-3-1 on the season. Here's what's interesting: their goal differential is 0. They've had 3 wins, 4-3, and then they've lost 5-1. But then they bounced back and win 6-3 the other night. So that's champion caliber to play right there. And they're sitting atop the Eastern Conference with 13 points right now, tied with the Rangers, who just happen to be my 2 Eastern Conference final picks, boys. Just in case you forgot. But they're the champions, and they've had a really, really good week. They got a really interesting matchup coming up later in the week, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But Panthers have picked it up a little bit since the first week of the season and have seemed to start playing a lot better.
Yeah, Florida really needs to maximize again. I mean, they're star-studded. They get all the way healthy too. That'll obviously play a key piece in this. They're a damn good hockey team. I totally agree with you. But what they're doing right now, yeah, it's still impressive, man. Especially coming off a Stanley Cup championship. This is good stuff. Marty, Josh, you guys had anything on them at all?
I want to ask Ron something. You were kind of talking about the goal differentials there. I think we've all kind of noticed this trend where teams are getting blown out of the water so far this season. I mean, how many goals did we see Tuesday night?
To your point, Josh, 98 goals on Tuesday
98
night.
goals. I'm going to be real honest with you. If I was Tristan Jarry, I'd be having mental problems too. If this is what I have to do every night,
Sure.
your time in goal might only be 5 minutes before they pull your ass. We are seeing some of the, in my opinion, for the beginning of the season, and maybe it shows that these guys are well rested and they feel good, and maybe it'll kind of, slow down later on in the season. But like, guys, we're seeing like 8-2s and 8-3s and 6-1s, and it's not like it's like once a week. It's every night we're seeing this.
And Josh, it was the same way last season because I remember talking to my neighbor who played at Western Michigan about all the goals last year and how exciting it was and how the games opened up and the European skaters are here now and the Americans and the Canadians are catching up to these guys. The amount of speed in the game is incredible. So to your point, and I know Marty knows this as a goalie, it's not fun out there right now. But what Florida's doing, Florida took on Vegas and won 4-3. They beat the Rangers. They beat the Islanders 6-3, and the Islanders are a pretty good defensive team. The way Patrick Roy plays and sets up his game. The Panthers are back, and they're a little top heavy right now. They lost a couple guys off the championship team. Brandon Montour's not there. Tarasenko's gone. They lost a little bit of depth, but I'm telling you, I said this in week 1. I'm high on the Panthers until somebody dethrones them. So it's fun to see them get back into the swing of things. Winning 5 of their last 7 games.
And they have a great coach too. I love the coach.
Love that guy. He's awesome. Yeah. Best interview in all of NHL coaches. He gives the best post-game interview of everybody. He's fantastic. Paul Maurice is an absolute legend. He's probably in top 3 of wins all time for coaches. Top 3 or 4, I believe.
He's got to be getting up there. He's been successful ever since he's been in the league. He's been around for quite a while.
Yeah. We were kind of talking earlier. Bobrovsky got his 400th win this week too. We were kind of talking about that. So that's a big part of, the Panthers as well. So,
Oh, key part of success there, absolutely, because we just spent a lot of time talking about how another team that's not having success, goaltending's not playing well. So, Marty, why don't you go ahead and tell us who you had your eyes set on this week?
So yeah, the team that I want to talk about is I'm going to be a homer this week, and I'm going to talk about the Blues a little bit. So I think the Blues are kind of setting up to having the same problem that they had last year, which is as of right now, they're showing no consistency. And they'll have these games like they did against Toronto, where they went out and looked like a great team. They really shut Toronto down. It was crazy to watch. And you saw Craig Berube kind of tuned his players there a little bit. Good for him. I think the players in Toronto are going to have to expect that going forward. He's, all the players always talk about how he's a coach where you don't have to guess where you stand. He'll let you know. So the Blues go out there, though, and have a great game against Toronto, but then come back and they just, they get beat by Montreal, and it's not even really a very good game. And you're seeing the same inconsistencies that you're seeing in the defense that you saw last year. We're getting Nick Leddy back. That's great, but you're still having the same problems on defense. And if you're going to play these games where your goaltender has to be perfect for you to win, or your goaltender has to be the best player on the ice for you to win, much like it was last season, you're going to be on the outside looking in again. So they need to find some sort of consistency when it comes to their defensive play, but also they're getting outshot very badly in these games, which St. Louis has never been known, especially under Craig Berube. He didn't necessarily want you to go out and take a bunch of mindless shots. He wanted you to get the higher quality chances, have puck possession, didn't really want the goalie getting warm. But, they're just not being very competitive in a lot of these games. So, the bright spots are still, though, I think, Jake Neighbors is still going to be a good player for the St. Louis Blues this season. Jordan Kyrie's coming out, and he's playing the game right. As of right now, I see him. There's always been question about how he plays two-way hockey. So far, as I've seen, you see the hustle out of him on the opposite end of the ice. It's easy for some of these younger kids to go out there and do the things that they need to do on offense, but then they don't necessarily. In the NHL anymore, it's pretty much unacceptable to not be a two-way team. It doesn't matter what line you're on. You're expected to play at both ends of the ice. And so far, I see Jordan Kyrou doing better this year. Jordan Bennington looks good as usual. Joel Hofer looks good as usual. But we're really going to need some help. And I think hopefully Broberg continues to develop into what we think he can. And hopefully we start, really seeing somebody take over that D line instead of Justin Falk. And don't even get me started on why he has to go out there and at times, play the most minutes, be the best player in the ice, and then be one of the few players that have dropped the gloves and actually take care of business at times. It's either him or Braden Shin. I think that's a little acceptable at times.
And he's the guy after the game that has to take the heat from the press on, why the defense, gave up 4 goals. And it's a shame because he's a veteran player. He's very talented. And I don't like seeing Justin Falk have to go through that because he plays both ends of the ice every game.
Well, before you guys, I'm going to let you three dive into the Blues really deep here, but I just want to add one thing, and then I'm going to step out on this conversation. Marty, you touched on him briefly. I think Philip Broberg is the most underrated player on the Blues thus far. It's early. I know it's extremely early in the season, but what he is doing right now, coming over from Edmonton, it looks like we stole him, in my opinion, at this point. Yeah. He's got 7 points on this season. 2 goals. Yes, 2 goals, 5 assists. The guy is legit. He's 23 years old. Tons and tons of potential here. I just wanted to make sure he got his credit. I'm going to step out and let you three take over this conversation. But yeah, Philip Broberg to me is the most underrated player on the Blues thus far.
No, I agree. Hey, Marty, you touched on this a second, and it caught my attention. You talked about shots on goal for the Blues. Here's what's interesting, and I don't have the exact number, but Tuesday in Winnipeg, they outshot Winnipeg and they lost. Montreal game, they outshot Montreal, and they got outplayed. They didn't just lose; they got outplayed. But they play in Toronto. They win 4-1, 5-1. They outshoot them 42-27. They outshoot them by 15 goals. Toronto did. And so I can't figure out this team. Like, they come out and they play hard, they shoot puck and they lose, and then they come out and get outshot and somehow they win by 4 goals. It's a very difficult team to figure out right now. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really points back to the same problems they had last year where I saw the same crap, And there is a mindset in the league that you don't want the opposing goaltender to get hot. So you don't necessarily want to give them these little gimme shots a lot in the league. because you see a lot of goaltenders once they get, let's say you go out in the first period and you get, in the first 12 minutes, you got 12, 15 shots on goal. You're feeling the juice is pretty good at that point, and your confidence just continues to build. I remember Craig Berube talking about, or somebody on the St. Louis Blues talking about how he hated when they would give him those little gimme shots. He wanted the goaltender to be like, man, I haven't really actually, there's been some action down here, but I haven't really had a shot on goal in like 6 minutes. There is a mindset out there that you only want to take high quality shots in this league. And with everybody being a sniper these days, absolutely, I understand.
Hey,
the dinks and dunks allow them to see the puck.
Wow. I mean, blocking shots, how a goaltender never in the NHL, rarely sees a puck all the way from the stick blade into either their breadbasket or the glove or whatever to their body. There's almost always somebody in front of you. It's remarkable. Goaltending in the NHL now is just remarkable.
103 mile an hour slap shot the other night. Who was it? Oh man,
I didn't see that. Really?
It was 103 miles an hour coming up
in a game setting. That's an absolute missile.
That's bringing the heat. Hey, Marty, I wanted to talk about you're a goalie, and we talked about Binnington. He's obviously been the man in St. Louis for 5-6 years. What do you think of Joel Hofer? He's got a shutout this year. He's posting a 96.2 save percentage. Is this kid the real deal? Is he the future?
As of right now, absolutely. Jordan Binnington came into this league a little bit older than most, and Jordan Binnington still plays like a younger goaltender. But let's be honest, eventually Father Time catches up with all of us. Now, do I think Joel Hofer will be a backup goaltender that long to wait until a Binnington retirement? Probably not. So if the Blues get in a position where they have to deal with a goaltender, this would break my heart, but they're going to have to make a decision. But also don't forget about Ville Husso. He's done so as of right now.
Well, he's the reason, Hofer's the reason why he got traded to Detroit, right?
Exactly. So you have these goaltenders that can play very consistent in this league. You have goaltenders that are very good down the stretch. And you can think back to goaltenders like when we had Chris Mason here in St. Louis. He wasn't a goaltender that was going to steal you a series, but down the stretch in the dog days of a season, he posted consistent numbers. And I felt like Ville Husso was a great goaltender, but he wasn't necessarily that big save goaltender in the playoffs, as we saw against Minnesota when they entered the playoffs that year. And then Binnington ended up taking over in his puck playing ability, which we could talk about a 3-hour episode on that, pretty much changed that series. So Hofer's a great puck-playing goaltender. He shoots the puck hard. I think at some point you're going to see one of our two goaltenders go for a goal in an empty net this season because we have two spectacular puck-playing goaltenders. But there's a lot to being a playoff goaltender, and there's a lot to being a regular season goaltender. Before you deal one of these goaltenders, you have to decide and make up, can they also be a playoff goaltender? Because I think we saw in Ville Husso, he's a great, solid, fundamental goaltender. He's going to have a high save percentage. He's going to have a low goals against average. He's not going to make many mistakes. But when you need to be that X factor and make that big save in the playoffs, that's a two totally different goaltender.
Well, which is where Binnington shines.
Absolutely. I don't care what Binnington does in the regular season. I want him in between the pipes in the playoffs because I'm telling you, if he does not get injured, Colorado may have still won that series, but they were certainly nervous to a certain degree about the way Binnington was playing in that series. And once he got injured, once again, Ville Husso did not come out and play bad, but he did not take that series like Binnington was in the process of taking that series. So as a franchise, you have to make a decision not to deal somebody too early in this situation, but you don't want to necessarily lose your younger talent when it comes to, you're going to have to make a decision.
I wasn't sure what to think of Hofer when he first came up a few years back, but I know it's a small sample size. He's 3-0. I mentioned his save percentage. He posted a shutout. I believe he has an assist. So
yep.
I think I've been impressed with him, and that's going to help get a team through some of the injuries they've had. Getting Sundqvist back, we talked about earlier, but Leddy's coming back, but now Thomas is out. So you're going to have to really lean on your goaltending. And we talked about this in the first episode as well. Having a tandem like Binnington needs a rest. It's good to have a guy like Hofer you can call and count on.
Absolutely. He's a very
Ron, you're usually like up to snuff right off the bat with. So what's Binnington's contract? Do you know?
He signed a 6-year, $30 million, and I believe he's through 4 years of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, that sounds right to me.
Does that sound right? So
this is a situation, and this is all speculation. This is just a talking point at this point to build off what Marty said, where you maybe have to make a tough decision at some point. you're kind of coming up on the end of this contract, and you're paying him obviously more than Hofer's making. You have a team that's really not making a Stanley Cup push, and I think the franchise is aware of that. You're kind of, what do they call it? Not They didn't call it a rebuild, but they called it like
Retool.
Retool.
a retool. So we're in a retool phase. Okay. Is there a situation where you could see a Bennington get moved, at the deadline next year, this year? I mean, to a contending team. I mean, we're trying to save money and build around guys. I mean, is that a possibility? Like, truly?
Who would we get for him is the question.
Well,
Well, absolutely. I'm just trying to figure out if the Blues will even have his name in conversations of being moved, I guess is my question.
I don't think so. Not this year.
No, I don't think
Me
it'll be
personally.
this year either, Colin. I think, getting to the end of it, and I'm looking up his contract now, but getting to the end of his contract, yeah, you're going to have that decision to make to what Marty was just saying. As an organization, I got to figure out where I'm going to build for the future. They do have a good minor league goalie in. He's a Russian guy, and I couldn't even begin to pronounce his last name. But he looked good in camp at the minimum at the time. He's had some work, but I don't know that they'll get rid of him. I think a lot of it depends on the cap spaces. It'll be up to 96.5. We talked about that last week. It's going to be tough to say. A lot of it's going to really depend on how Hofer continues to play too, right? So
yeah, and to your point, it's a small sample. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the fact of like the Blues are retooling, and if they know they can't win now, I'm one of those guys, and all of you have talked plenty of sports with me to know that as much as it breaks my heart to move on from franchise cornerstone players, whether it be, our St. Louis Cardinals, our St. Louis Blues, whatever it is, if you're not in win now mode and you have these guys and they're making big time money and they're championship contender type players and your team's not a championship contending team, get what you can for them while you can. I hate to see guys go, but I am one that, like, if you're not winning now, let's build for the future. Let's have a plan. Let's have a purpose. And, I'm not saying go out there and sandbag it, but Joel Hofer is a good enough goalie on this small sample where you could still win games with him and still be retooling, not rebuilding, while maximizing your return on Bennington.
Bennington came in the league. I think he was 25. He had his entry level contract. He signed a 6-year, $36 million. So it wasn't $5 million; it was $6 million a year. He has 2 years left on that. He'll be 33 years old. That's not old for a goalie per se. It's not young either, but I don't know if looking at his age and the amount of money he's going to command after the $6 million 6-year contract is up, he's probably going to ask for $7-8 million. He might get it somewhere on a team that needs a goalie. I like Marty said, I mean, having a guy like Hofer in the net gives him a little bit of reassurance to say, hey, maybe we can deal Bennington that last year of his contract. Get some youth or some picks for him. I love Bennington too. Guy won the cup here, right? But
he truly won the cup for the Blues. Yeah. Let's be honest. But Josh, you look like you had something to add into this a second ago. We
haven't seen Hofer in goal 4 nights a week either.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
I think until we see that, it's really hard to judge Hofer and his skill set and kind of compare him to a Stanley Cup champion like Jordan Bennington.
No, and I don't.
You guys know me. I'm a Jordan Bennington fanboy.
I love Bennington too.
Just from a puck playing standpoint, I'm a fanboy. It took me a while to warm up to him. I warmed up to him obviously after he won the Stanley Cup, but then it was really the season after where I really warmed up to him. But I'm all in now. I do think that Jordan Bennington is an elite goaltender. I think if Jordan Bennington has a little bit better defense in front of him, I believe he's a finalist goaltender. I think he's a top goaltender in the league. And I think we can talk about this at length, but I think his puck playing ability in his own zone is right up there with the best in the league. We've seen him completely it used to be you could shut down offenses doing that. I don't think you see that as much in the league now. I don't think you see as many teams that are just strictly like dump and chase teams. If you're a dump and chase team and that's all you do and you have a goaltender like Bennington who plays the puck, will completely shut your offense down. I don't think there's many teams in the league that play just strictly one style anymore. But what he could do though is force offenses that have to change how they enter our zone. And that is, especially when you have a defensive core that isn't as strong as you would like them to be, that is a huge advantage to have because the first pass out of the zone is the most important pass in hockey, in my opinion.
Oh,
So
for
if
sure.
you have a goaltender that can move that puck to the other defenders, your other defensemen, your wingers. I mean, you'll even see Bennington every now and again make a move in front of the net in the slot, which is like a huge no-no as a goaltender. But when you're that good, you can get away with it from time to time. So I think that there's a lot of levels as to Joni Bennington's game that could make him an elite goaltender in this league.
Well,
I
let me
think,
preface this to Josh's point real quick. I'm by no means comparing Joel Hofer to Jordan Bennington. My
Sure.
thoughts
No,
are,
I'm sorry.
I wasn't
let me
saying
put this
that
in
either.
let me put this in like terms of like my thoughts, because I have nightmares, and not to get off on a tangent, but I have nightmares over what the St. Louis Cardinals have done to their organization, where they
Sure.
keep these cornerstone players around, and when a team's not there to win right now, and you burn them out, and you still don't win, and you waste cap, and you don't get any better, you don't improve, you don't move guys while you can get something for them. So I was just thinking, if we're in a retool and we think Joel Hofer can go out and be serviceable right now through this retool phase and get his feet wet for when we're ready to go win, and you can get return for Bennington, I hate to see him go too. It's just my thoughts where you can really build and get a good return investment for a guy like Jordan Bennington.
Jordan Bennington's game improves tenfold if you get Colton Parayko off that ice. I'm done here with it. Oh, he scored a goal the other night. You can't sit here and tell me he's not a problem. He's half skating, half striding when he's out there. It's a problem. It really
Ron,
is.
tell him.
And I think it sets
Ron,
bad precedence for the rest of the defense. And I've said this 2 episodes in a row, and for some reason, Justin Falk has to wear it on the chin. And people hate Krug. Krug's the fastest skating defenseman we had. And people didn't like him, but he was always out there. He was skating whistle to whistle.
On me.
He was a foot shorter than Colton Parayko and played a foot harder than Colton Parayko every.
And people didn't like him because he came out of Boston. He was one of their top defensemen coming out of Boston, and then he comes here, and you're pairing him up with Parayko, and these guys aren't the problem. I'm so tired of seeing Parayko game after game, half skate, half stride, and the rest of the team, and it sets a precedent. It really does for the team. Yeah,
collect a high paycheck. Ron, tell him, man. You tell Josh how many years you and I have bitched about Colton Parayko.
Well, we said it last week. He had a guy like Pietrangelo. We all think highly of him. That covered for him most of the time, and I don't want to turn it into I think Parayko's a great guy. I wish he'd play like his size and actually use his size, but I don't know. I mean. It's just, here's the deal with the whole roster, right? You look at the Blues rosters. They got several Leddy, Krug, like old defensemen. They got rid of a few of them last year. They brought in Broberg, which is a huge addition. You talk about goaltending. What are they going to do when Bennington's 33 years old? Hey, this is all going to be Alexander Steen's problem, not ours. And I think that's going to be a big moment in his transition from being Doug Armstrong's apprentice, who is one of the best GMs in the league. I think we're going to find out how good Steen really is, because that's not going to be an easy decision, taking a guy like Bennington and trading him away, right?
And,
the fans, dude, the fans would absolutely stand.
It's going to be fun, right?
Bennington does if and when he were to get traded. Let's be honest.
But if Hofer's the guy. If Hofer's the guy, 6-7 years younger than him, and you got this other guy in the minors, maybe that makes it a fairly easy decision. And, not in any sport for that matter, but not every elite player in the league at their respective position stays with the same team. That's just part of the salary cap era. And
Steven Stamkos.
Stamkos is a perfect example. Now you look at Ovechkin, Crosby, McDavid. We talked about whether or not he stays, but the Blues are going to have some interesting decisions coming up, because they got a lot of youth on the back end. We talked about that. 12 guys under the age of 25 at opening, in camp this year. Many of those guys are on the starting roster. But then you got a bunch of aging defensemen and a goalie who's going to be 33 when his contract ends. It's going to be really wild to see what they do.
I have one thing to add to this, and then if everybody else does too, we'll wrap up the Blues and move on. But to your point, Ron, the Blues, to me, have proved that they're a team that is willing to move on for the better of the organization, in my opinion. We look at Tarasenko, look at Backus, look at Oshie. This is David Perron. This is a franchise that has proved that when they feel the time is right and the return is right and the investment is right, they are willing to make those moves. And I respect that, and that is why I think the Blues are a successful organization.
Yeah.
Versus their neighbor across the street in the Major League Baseball. So, Josh, I mean, you look like you had something else to add, and we'll kind of wrap this Blues talk up. We've dwelled on them long enough now.
No, I think I've said my piece. I will say Colton Parayko does a lot of stuff for the community. He's very involved with the Children's Hospital here in St. Louis. So,
He's a pro,
I'm not
right?
saying
He's a great guy.
He is a great guy, and he's a big staple here in St. Louis.
We expect more of him.
I do expect more of him.
Yeah.
Make him the mayor. Just don't make him our top defenseman. You know,
I'd rather you just start hitting dudes and scoring goals. That's what I want.
God, you bring it up again, but you're right. There's been so many years we've had the conversation of Parayko must be hurt. Okay, well, I'm done having the conversation that he must be hurt. He's just playing like a chicken shit. Play harder or go be the mayor. I'm with that. Marty, do you have anything else you want to throw on the note here?
This is nothing against Colton Parayko. I think he's a fantastic human being. I love the guy. I want him to do well. And it's not that he's playing, in my opinion, it's not that he's playing abhorrently bad. But he's playing abhorrently mediocre. And in my opinion, maybe he just hasn't really developed into the defenseman we thought he would. I think Ron brought up a good point about playing with Petrangelo. You also had Bo Meester at that time, who I think when we lost Bo Meester, we really lost a huge chunk of our defensive core.
When you're 7 foot tall,
when you're that size,
how do you physically not develop into that?
When you're that size and you skate that well at times, and you have that long of a reach, and you have that hard of a shot,
he's making $1 million for every foot he is tall.
We're looking for a Zdeno. This is unfair, but we're looking for a Zdeno Chara type defenseman. Is what we're asking him to be. I'm
asking for half of that. I'm asking for.
I know you are. But when you see a player with his build, there's certain things you're expecting out of him, and it's probably
when you see Torrey Krug half his size play that much harder. This is all of why we're talking.
You want to know what's unfair? Is the guy, like you just said, Torrey Krug, who's 6 foot on skates, is having to play harder than him.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Because Parayko isn't.
That's exactly right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I think Ron and Josh touched on this last week too. You have guys like Braden Shin, who are older guys on this team who should no longer be your enforcer, who should no longer be the guy dropping gloves. You have guys like Parayko who should be taking over a role like that. And he's just not. I mean, this is
not.
Yeah.
Not him.
Enough of the Blues. We could do this all night long. Maybe we'll just have a special over the Blues when we think about them before this is all said and done. But now to talk about my team that I had my eyes on this last week, and I'm going to go a really, really bad direction. The San Jose Sharks. I don't even know how to talk about this nicely at this point without coming off too strong. But, fellas, they're 0-9 to begin the season. This is officially the worst start in NHL history. They look like they might get a win this last weekend against Vegas at one point.
Yeah.
And then it blows up and they implode and they lose 7-3 on Saturday night to Vegas. Right after they look like they might maybe go get them one. But they didn't. We should have known better. Let's talk about one thing here, too. They have a negative 21 goal differential. Do you guys have any idea who the next closest goal differential is? It's
Probably
minus
12.
13.
Yeah, 12.
Minus 13. This is seriously a horrendous start. This is as bad of a start as you could ever get, historically speaking, actually, to back that up. I mean, minus 21 in 9 games is so bad, fellas. This is so bad. Their penalty kill is not good. Their power play is not good. They don't have a single skater with a positive plus-minus. Think about that for a second. Horrible. They only have 3 skaters over 5 points. Mackenzie Blackwood being their best goalie right now with a .897 save percentage. This is just not a recipe for success. I don't know how, and I hate to throw it on coaching, but I don't know how much longer you could live with that coaching situation. I hate to be that way, but when you start out 0-9, at some point, your GM, your front office is taking a step back like, okay, we have to stop the bleeding. I mean, we have to at least go win a game. If I recall, of that 0-9, there's only one of those that's an overtime loss. I mean, they're not even competing.
Yeah. Well, they're going to get Logan Couture back, Collin, but you're right. They're rebuilding. They are the classic case of a team rebuild. Mike Greer, former Blue alum, tough guy back in the year. He took over as GM. He's made some really tough decisions. But I don't know how much I can blame on Warsofsky, their new head coach, Ryan Warsofsky, because other than Celebrini and a few other guys, they don't have a ton of talent there.
They've got nothing, man.
I know and so it's tough to really look at their coach, but and now Josh mentioned earlier Celebrini's out, so now he's hurt. It just doesn't.
But 0-9, Ron. 0-9. You could tell me all day long you're rebuilding. If the Blues called me up tomorrow and said, "Hey man, we're going to rebuild next year," never in a million years would I think that rebuilding meant we're going to start the season 0-9.
I agree.
Yeah. You can't run into a win. You can't run into
I agree. It's definitely panic time for them. I mean, the San Jose Sharks are not a good team. Let's be very honest here. They're not supposed to be a good team. They're not a good team. That's okay. But 0-9, there is a little bit of panic. You don't expect, I think, any team expects to be that bad coming into the season, but they're not supposed to be a good team right now. They're clearly rebuilding. I agree. And they're going to take this on the chin for a while because outside of every time they played the St. Louis Blues last year, they were not a very good team last year either. But boy,
the year before, the only reason we were talking about him was because Carlson was having an outstanding year. I mean, I don't remember how many points he put up that season. But
after having a terrible year the year before that.
Yeah. Yes. So, I mean, there is kind of I hate to say this with the California teams out there, there is kind of a trend of them being, as of late, being kind of bottom tier or just mediocre teams across them. And I don't know, I don't really know why, but the same thing can kind of be said about Anaheim for the last couple of years. They're kind of non-existent in the conversation. LA's off to a pretty good start this year, but San Jose, I mean,
there
was a point in time when San Jose was going to the playoffs every year.
Well, they damn near beat us, the Blues, in 19.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Remember that with the whole hand pass controversy? The Blues came back and won it.
Yeah.
But
if it wasn't for the hand pass, I don't think that would have been a close series. But.
No, but let's be honest. They're rebuilding. They had an awful contract with Erik Karlsson. Absolutely awful. They finally unloaded into Pittsburgh. They've had some good draft picks. They got Zetterlund, who's a good young talent. They brought in Alex Winberg, but their top 3 point scorers is Granlund, Toffoli, and Eklund, and they're all 3 -7. So, Collin, to your point,
yes, dude, it's that
these
bad.
Are your 3 point scorers, and they are 3 of the 4 worst plus minuses on your team. That's scary. That's bad.
And Michael Granlund's leading the team with probably 9 points. I don't even think he's double
10
digits
points.
yet.
10 points in 9 games, and Toffoli's right there at 7 in 9 games. So. It's just it's tough to see and celebrate.
We can call it a rebuild. We can call it a rebuild all night long, but this is like off to a start of like a generational rebuild. Yeah, I mean,
they're putting.
I can't wrap my head around 0-9.
They're putting footings in a 9-foot pour in still right now. It's going to take them a long time to rebuild this, right?
They're wheelbarrowing the quickcrete around the house rather than using a truck. They're
mixing it with a shovel.
Yeah, Blackhawks have been there. Blackhawks are coming around. They're similar to them, but the Sharks are going to be. And you're right. I think Marty mentioned it. They play bad unless they play the Blues. The Blues got a scare from them earlier in the season. Had to come back from behind and win. So, yeah, Collin,
you don't have a single player with a positive plus minus. That is.
It's tough. It's tough.
That's bad.
And you hate to see it. Mike Greer's got a tough. He inherited a shitty hand, and Warsofsky's going to have to figure out a way to make these guys come out and play every night. Otherwise, it's going to be a very long season there.
Really bad. But all right, let's go ahead and transition out of the negative talk. I mean, because that's just, I don't even know what to say about that anymore. That's just as bad as it gets. Good luck to the San Jose Sharks. If they have real fans out there in California when there's 1,000 teams to choose from in all sports, man, I wish you all the best. If we have any San Jose Shark fans out there, please let us know what's going on out there and what you guys think they need to improve on. We will gladly address it on this show for you guys. But now let's talk a little bit about what we think is the best weekly matchups to come this coming week. Marty, you've been quiet the last 5 minutes. I think it's your time to shine. Tell me what you are looking forward to this coming week with the matchup.
Honestly, for me, if if I'm going to go after one series to keep an eye on there, that's going to be Wednesday, October 30th, and that's going to be the Golden Knights versus the LA Kings. I'm a fan of the Kings. I like the way that they play hockey. I started really noticing them a little bit more last season, and I've always been a huge Anze Kopitar fan. I love watching that guy play hockey still to this day. So I think that LA Kings, I don't think that they're necessarily going to win the Pacific, but I think that they're going to put up a little bit tougher fight in that division this season. So I do expect them to be up there towards the top, and I'm looking forward to that series there. Just kind of a series that I think kind of flies under the radar. I like it.
Yeah, Kopitar's been on fire lately too. We talked about him earlier today, Marty. He's been playing really good. Had himself a hat trick last week. It'd be nice when they can get Drew Doughty back. He's going to be out indefinitely. I don't think they've named when he's going to come back, but I think that's going to be a really good matchup. Didn't those two meet in the playoffs a few years ago in a series? Vegas and LA? I think they did in 2022.
Okay.
It was a good series. It was a really good series. So
yeah, that was the year that LA kind of came out of nowhere, right? And they really made a push late.
That's right. That's
right.
I think they made a late push, and I think they had some good goaltending down the stretch, actually. And if I remember correctly, too, talking about Drew Doughty, I think he put out of his mind
he did
a little bit down.
What a cagey veteran he is, right? Just a great.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to Marty's point, it's. I can find myself backing LA a little bit. You know, it's a hard city for me to cheer for ever. But I mean, I can support the LA Kings a little bit, and I mean that's just how I feel about it. If anybody else has anything to add, if not, I'm going to transition over to Josh. Josh, if you got anything on this, real quick, hit us with that, and then transition right into what you are excited for this coming week.
No, I don't really have anything to say about that. What I'm excited about this week is on Saturday night, we have two of my most disliked teams playing each other. The Avs are at Nashville, so go ahead and turn your TV off and, spend some time with the family and don't watch that game. Ron, did you check the score of the New Jersey game? Is that what you were looking at?
No, Corey Perry just got into a scrap with somebody. I'm watching highlights. I don't have that game on.
I think the Jersey game just wrapped up 6-2 or 6-3, I believe.
Did it?
Back to what we were saying. These guys are just putting on a clinic, man. It's unreal.
Yeah, 6-2. Devils beat the Ducks. Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully the Nashville Avs game goes into like triple overtime, tied 1-1, and
Well, for all you guys out there, to Josh's point here, for all you guys out there, make sure you're following our socials because Josh is going to update you all throughout the season every single night that Avs or Nashville loses. He has made it clear that every night these teams lose, he will tweet it out from our Deep Threat Sports Network pages. So make sure you are tuned into that, especially if you're an Avs or Nashville hater like we are. But speaking of Nashville, Ron, I'm going to cut in here real quick. This isn't really a game I have my sights set on that I want to talk about, but while we are on the topic of Nashville, let's talk about how Steven Stamkos is making an appearance on Monday back to Tampa. I think, correct me if I am wrong, but this is the first time since 2008 he has suited up in the Tampa Bay arena, not on the Tampa Bay Lightning. So what kind of, here in St. Louis, we are very loyal to our players that come back, whether they choose to leave or whether they get traded away. No matter what that is, when they come back and visit St. Louis, they get a standing ovation longer than the first period would ever even last. I mean, we pay respects in St. Louis. Do you expect Tampa Bay to pay their respects? I mean, they have to, right? Everything he's brought that franchise. The fans should understand that he moved on for the better himself because Tampa wasn't paying him what he thought he was worth. So, Ron, real quick, I know you're really big into these kind of conversations. Do you think he'll get the credit he deserves? And what do you think that really looks like? How does he feel going into this game?
I think it's going to be emotional for him. I mean, he spent his whole career there, as you mentioned, but should be a really, really good game. Nashville's kind of picked it up a little bit here, and I know a lot of us are a fan of them, but they have been playing better. Forsberg's been lighting up. Marcia Show had a game winner in overtime, I think, the other night. I think it's going to be fun for the fans because they're a loyal a bunch down there as well. He won 2 cups and went three or four times. He was there with Tampa. I think he's going. I'm going to tell you right now. I think he's going to score a goal. That's what I think is going to happen.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
let's
how great would
find
that be for the fans? Like, do you cheer or do you just like you have to cheer, right?
I think they'd
let's
go nuts. I think they'd
let's
go
It'd be
find
nuts.
lines
awesome.
on that. Let's
That's a
find
good
lines on
call.
that and make that our lock of the week. That
So
Steven Stamkos scores.
tomorrow night we'll look at goals for Stamkos. Hopefully it's plus money, and I think we should all play it. That's what I think.
We'll all
Amen.
play it, and we'll put it out on our socials that we're playing it, and we'll drop the odds for you guys of what we're going to take it at, because I like that. I really, and I'm not just saying that. I think this is one of those situations where clearly this guy knows how to score in Tampa, and this is going to be one of those moments where he is probably a little salty that they didn't pay him what he thought he was worth. So I think he's actually trying to prove a point here, maybe a little bit, that hey, you still missed out on lightning in a bottle, pun intended. And I'm
Yeah,
still the guy. I am still the
Si-
guy. And to your point as well,
16 seasons, man.
yeah.
That's
I
a
mean,
long time.
that's some legendary shit. That's really legendary in my opinion. And Nashville, to your point, Ron, if you look just at their roster, we talked about this last week, how they weren't playing good. They're a loaded roster, man. And Hussein Saros in goal is, if he finds it, is as good as anybody, in my opinion, in net. So they are a team that I think down the stretch, as much as Josh doesn't want to hear this, I think Nashville can really, really come into their own throughout this season on the show. You have two guys that were longtime captains throughout their career in Ryan O'Reilly and Steven Stamkos, and have proven to be winners, have Stanley Cup championships behind them. They have the pedigree on that team to make a run.
Yeah,
I
and
absolutely agree.
unlike the boys in San Jose who just can't get out of the rut, we knew and we talked about it. Nashville was, I think they started 0-4, 0-5. I think it was 0-4. We knew that wasn't going to last. We knew it was going to take time to gel, and they certainly turned the corner in the last week. I'm actually in town tomorrow, and I am going to suit up myself and watch that game because I think that's going to be a hell of a game tomorrow night, for sure.
Yes, without a doubt. But so let's transition right into your game that you're going to be watching this week, Ron. What's your game of the week you got for us?
I actually have two because it's the defending champs, Florida. Florida plays Dallas in a home and home back to back Friday and Saturday. And for all you junkies who work from home, all you hockey fans who work from home, that game on Friday I think is a 1 o'clock start, which is kind of cool. You don't see that very often in the NHL. But I talked about Florida a little bit earlier. They're on a streak. They're 5-2 in their last 7. Dallas is, right there behind Winnipeg. Winnipeg is someone we should be talking about as well. And I know we all like what they're doing, but Dallas is sitting right there in the spot in second place in the Central. Of course, talk about fantasy hockey. Matt Duchene. I don't know if you noticed, Collin. I dumped him, and the guy went on an absolute heater the next 3 games.
Heater.
It happens to me all the time. He leads their team in scoring. Stankoven's second. Sagan's third. Ottinger's just lights out. I know, Marty picked him as well for his Vezina winner, just like I did. That guy's putting up like a 1.7.
Spoiler alert there.
Yeah, it's coming. I mean, it's obvious he is playing really, really well. So I think those 2 games, Friday afternoon, Saturday night, will be something that hockey fans will want to tune into. It's again, I picked both those teams to be in my finals in the East and West, and I have Dallas going to the Stanley Cup Finals. So they're both playing really, really well right now. Should be fun to watch.
Might see a preview of some playoff hockey this weekend.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So I am going to give the game that I actually wanted to talk about. I just wanted to shed some light on the Steven Stamkos situation. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, so we can try to get into our picks, spend a little bit more time on the refresher of our picks, and get into Marty's. But yeah, the other game that I have my eye set on this week is actually Monday at 6:30, and I think the Toronto-Winnipeg game has the recipe to be an absolute banger. I think Toronto has to find it. I think they are – I can't say they're reeling. It's early. But I think they need to really step into their own here. Toronto's 3-26 on the power play so far this season. That's really not good for them, especially with the top end skaters that they have. Not a recipe for success. And we're sitting here and talk about Winnipeg being so successful. They're undefeated right now. They have 10 players over 5 points and 5 players over 9 points and 8 skaters averaging a point a game.
Jeez.
So What Toronto has in store to slow them down, I don't know. I believe that game is in Winnipeg, so this should be a certified banger. Toronto's going to have to outscore them to beat them because Winnipeg does not struggle scoring points. But go ahead.
Hey, Collin, real quick, and congrats to Scott Arniel. I don't know if you were going to mention this or not. First coach to go 8-0 in his tenure as a head coach for any team in the NHL in the history of the NHL. That's pretty impressive, right?
That's very, very impressive.
Really cool stat as well. In Winnipeg, and I mean, they got Hellebuck, right? We all love Hellebuck.
Yeah, how can you not?
They're just playing really good hockey. So when is that game? That game's tomorrow night, Collin?
Yeah, Monday night at 6:30 p.m. and I believe it's in Winnipeg.
That's good.
So with that being said, we've gave you five or six games now to be tuned into this week. Tons of good hockey throughout the week as usual, but just 5 or 6 games there that we all have our attention on, that we all are talking about amongst ourselves, that we wanted to shed some light on for all you out there. So Ron, let's kick it over to your special segment, and then we're going to kick it into Marty's new special segment talking about some goaltending. But real quick, Ron, give us a milestone update on some of the milestones that we touched on last week and how they're currently sitting.
Yeah, Ovechkin picked up a couple goals. He's 40 away from actually breaking the record, 39 from tying it. So, Ovi's a sniper. He always will be. It's going to be fun to watch that unfold. You also had Kopitar. We talked about him a little bit ago. He is 2 assists away from 800 career assists, which is pretty impressive. The second person behind him in assists is Tavares. He'll end up getting, I think he's 12 away from getting his 600 assists. Crosby we talked about. Malkin we talked about. Bobrovsky, I think Josh mentioned earlier, he got to his 400th win. I think Letang is the next one in games played to get to 1,100. I think he's 3 away from that. And Kopitar is 18 away from 1,400 games. So if he keeps doing what he's doing, he's probably Hall of Fame worthy. I know we talked a little bit about Kopitar on this week's show, and kudos to him. He's been in the league a long time, and he's been playing really, really well. So that's my updates on milestones, boys. We'll keep you posted next week.
And Bob got his win we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
Got his wins correct.
Got his 400.
His milestone, 400. That's fantastic.
Pretty impressive.
Perfect transition, Marty. Your time to shine, baby. The ex-collegiate goaltender, talking about some goaltending. Break down a goalie or two for us that you want to talk about and what you love or hate seeing with these guys right now.
Get in the crease, bud.
Get in the crease, baby.
Get in the crease.
We need to make a very serious disclaimer here. I believe that was like D2 club collegiate hockey. Okay.
It doesn't matter. You were still in the crease as a collegiate goaltender.
And only played there for 1 semester, and then I dropped out into a technical college.
Doesn't matter, Marty. You were still a collegiate goaltender in the crease. That's more than any of us can say.
Okay. It was on ice, right? You were
That's
on ice.
right.
It was indeed on ice.
It wasn't roller hockey, right? Perfect. Book it, man. Here we go. We're moving on.
So, okay, if I am sitting there and there's going to be 2 very obvious goaltenders to talk about here, in my opinion, and that's Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger. So, like you said, spoiler early, Jake Ottinger is my pick for the Vezina, and I've been looking for him. Goalies sometimes take a while to develop, and I was looking for him to take that next step, but I was looking at it a little early, apparently, because I did pick him up on fantasy the last 2 years, and he didn't do a whole lot for me, but I do like the way that he has shown how he plays in the playoffs. So, I think we all agree Dallas is going to be a playoff team here, and I do like Ottinger's play oftentimes when I see him in the playoffs, and I'm expecting him to make a bigger step here. So I think he's an elite goaltender. I think all the tools are there. I think he just has to put everything together. That's a problem sometimes with goaltenders, is kind of putting everything together at once. And when you put everything together, you see these goaltenders go on runs, then you see them kind of chill out for a few years. I think Ottinger's an elite goaltender. I think he's going to be an elite goaltender in this league for a while. I think the question is will he be like an Andrei Vasilevsky goaltender? That's what's to be seen at this point, in my opinion. Will he kind of get to that next level where you're winning Vezinas, you're winning Stanley Cups? I think that is his goal. That has to be his goal playing in Dallas. Another goaltender that, obviously I mentioned was Connor Hellebuck. He is such an interesting goaltender for me to watch because he is so sturdy in that. I don't know how to word it exactly. You don't see him roam. You don't see him get out of position ever. You don't see him, at least I don't see it often. You don't see him plays super aggressive, but yet he's not playing too deep in the net. He just seems to be kind of really squared away where I guess he just kind of plays perfectly. He's at the perfect depth in his net. He doesn't overslide. You don't see him mess up his edge work often. He's just about as technical of a sound goaltender as I've seen in a long time.
He's fundamentally sound, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know what I call that, Marty? He's quiet. He's quiet in net.
He is.
And that's the best way to describe it. And everything he sees, it's like he's seeing a beach ball. The guy is playing out of his head right now.
The game is slow to him, right? And in a good way. The game is slow to him rather than you see some of these goaltenders where it's happening so fast they can't keep up. They can't locate pucks. For him, you're spot on, both of you. The game is slow for him. He's quiet. He is fundamentally sound as it gets.
Yeah, it's funny because that was the one goaltender that we actually found something on in our playoff cup run. We found that blocker side tendency of his where he would get beat far side blocker side a lot. And I mean, obviously that's a problem he's clearly fixed. But
I was gonna say he fixed that.
You saw him early on as a great goaltender, but at times, I don't see him struggle. Every time I watch him play, I can't think of the last time I've seen him be like a reason they've lost. And that's really hard to have that level of consistency in this league, in my opinion, as a goaltender. And that's why he's winning business. And until somebody goes over there and knocks him off that throne, I see him doing it again, obviously.
Hey, Marty, well, here's what's interesting. Winnipeg, dating back to last season, has won 16 straight regular season games, and he's played in most of those. It's an incredible run that Winnipeg is on right now.
Wow.
If they can figure out how to get through the playoffs, right? And that's why I have him going to the finals in the West this year. I think they're going to ride him. And to your point, he's been the man.
Yeah.
Is he the best goaltender in the league? Like truly. I mean, because we saw a guy like Vasilevsky kind of run that board, like in my opinion, for some years, and you're kind of seeing him peter out. Not to mention Vasilevsky pulling the bullshit the other night, blowing ice on Sergachev, I think is who it was, or whatever, and then he goes out and gets pulled
right
early
after that. Yeah, it was actually kind of bittersweet. I kind of liked it.
Well, hey, Josh, just so you know, Marty, I don't know if you checked the notes or caught this in the last episode. I know you weren't with us last week. Josh picked him to win back-to-back Vezinas this year, and it's only been done twice in the last 20 years by the same guy, Martin Brodeur. So if Winnipeg is going to get there, they're going to do it on his back.
Oh, they have to. That is their bread and butter. You can't even call him the X factor because, to Marty's point, he's so consistent and never a reason that they lose. He's not even the X factor. He's just there. Like he is just the guy in the crease, as we like to say here. That is just a horse, man. He is.
Even if he has a bad night, we don't know it.
Right.
No, the team doesn't know it. He's like, he could come off the ice
just
and be
good
like,
enough.
My knee was killing me all game, or and you don't know it when he's out there on the ice.
His rebound control over the years has also been something that I've really noticed in his game. His rebound control is just spectacular. It seems like if you hit him, I just never see him give up like a chest. You see some goaltenders that have to kind of bat down a chest save every now and again and knock a puck down and not necessarily control the rebound. It seems like anything that hits him in his arms, his shoulder area, of course, the breadbasket in the belly, it seems like it sticks to him. So he's a solid goaltender. Now, obviously, going forward, I'm going to break down other goaltenders as these episodes go on. So this is a segment where, I'm not going to tell you who I'm going to talk about next weekend, but we're going to be getting to all of them. So,
it's
are the
just
two that
one
I'm
of
breaking
those
down today, but
it's just one of those deals with Hellebuck too. And I said it a second ago, and I don't want it to go unnoticed because so many people forget the fundamentals of sports, and they talk about the advanced statistics or advanced movements. He is truly 110% a master at his craft and fundamentals, and that is where some guys lack sometimes. When they go out there, they forget what got them there and they try to do too much. Tristan Yarrow, we talked about him earlier, is a guy that forgets what got him to that position to be a professional goaltender. Dude, just get back to get back to the basics, man. Remember what got you here. So, Connor Hellebuck is legit as it gets. And if nobody else has anything to add, let's talk about.
I do. I have a couple milestones I'd like to throw out there real quick, just for goaltenders. If you don't mind. So Jonathan Quick is 5 wins away from 400. He's currently at 395. I know that he's not going to be getting a bulk of games here. Heaven forbid. I mean, that's the goal going here because New York Rangers probably don't even want to talk about that, but I do think he'll play enough. I do think he'll get it. So that's something I'm kind of keeping an eye on. And also we got Freddie Anderson. He's at 298. So he's got 2 more wins away from getting to 300. Seems like he's been in the league for absolutely forever. And then you have Vasilevsky at 297. He's 3 away from 300. So I think that those Varlamov's a little bit further back there. He's at 287. I don't know if he hits that. Probably it'll be close. It would be hard for him to, I think, but I could be wrong on that. But yeah, Freddie Anderson and Vasilevsky. Freddie Anderson is just a goalie that never goes away. Seems like somebody's always picking him up and have success with him.
He doesn't.
Well, you talked about before we leave the goalie segment here, because he has been such a staple and a legend in the hockey league, and we kind of touched on him a second ago. Is Vasilevsky going the wrong direction at this point? You guys think? No, you guys don't think? Okay.
No, you can't, you can't be dominant forever. I mean, you're gonna. He's still an elite goaltender, but I mean, you can't.
Okay.
You can't be dominant forever, in my opinion.
He's played in 484 games. He's got 297 wins. Wrap your head around that. That's pretty impressive.
Pretty
impressive, right?
There's no doubt with what he has done. Been
in the league since 14. I think he came in the league. Does that sound right? So he's probably in his 10th season.
Yeah.
30 wins a season. He's averaging 30 wins a season. That's pretty impressive. I think he's got a lot left in the tank, Collin. I really do.
How long has he been with Tampa Bay?
I think his whole career.
The whole time, right? I think
it was shortly after that Tampa Bay kind of became a presence in the
NHL. You're spot on, Josh. And I think to my point here is when you set the bar so high, we talk about this in all sports. When you set the bar so high, anytime you don't achieve that highest of high standards anymore, it's more recognizable that you are no longer the mecca at what you do. So, and I don't think he's bad. Don't get me wrong. I don't know if obviously this is, I feel like a pretty obvious statement. I think you've seen your best of Vasilevsky though at this point.
I'm not one to judge somebody on a bad game or anything like that. Especially when I've seen him at the highest of highs. It's hard for me personally to do that. Maybe after 2 seasons of mediocre playing and some really low spots, I might have some criticism, but
yeah,
I think he's good to go. I think, karma kind of got him this week, given the Toronto player the ice bath, before the game. So it kind of caught up to him.
I mean, to your guys' point, he still had 30 wins last season.
Yeah, that's what he averages for his career.
Yeah, and I think he was banged up a little bit last year too. Still goes out and gets 30 wins with a .90 save percentage and a 2.9 GAA. I mean, definitely the highest of his career by a wide margin. But when you're putting up consistent, 2.4s and a .925 and a .93, I mean, that's my point here is the difference is recognizable because you were so damn good for so damn long.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't. The same goalie can't win the Vezina every year, and that's why you don't really see that. I mean, you can go back to where there's some Dominik Hasek domination in the Vezina race. There was some Martin Brodeur domination for a few years there in a row. But I mean, the same goalie can't win the Vezina every year. There's so many. I mean, we could talk about how there's maybe the least amount of elite goaltenders in the NHL that I've seen in a long time, but all these goaltenders are so good. And a lot has to go right for you to be like a Vezina winning goaltender. So, I mean, to expect somebody to maintain that their every season of their entire career is just unrealistic, but it doesn't mean that they're not still elite. That's my opinion.
I'd say right now,
I think that's where he's
Hellebuyck. If we were handing that trophy out right now, I mean, he's good.
I still consider Vasilevsky an elite goaltender, though.
If we're going to see a repeat season, it'll be this year, I think.
Well, while we're talking about these awards, one question for Marty, because I know my boy Marty is in love with our boy Binnington. Just for shits and grins, since we're talking about it. Binnington or Vasilevsky moving forward?
For like the Blues?
Just if you're building a team. I just want to see how much you love Binnington. I'm just putting a little pressure on you right here off the cuffs.
Are you crying?
No, that's a I mean, you're putting me on the spot here.
It's a great
hot
question.
takes, baby.
It's a great question.
My heart goes to Bennington, but if I'm speaking logically, you almost have to give it to Vasilevsky. He's the proven. Agree. I mean, he's a Conn Smythe caliber goaltender. I
would agree.
It's tough. I mean, I love Bennington.
I just feel like they're very.
But,
no, I just feel like they're very. Honestly, I think at this point in both their careers, they're a very comparable goaltender, and I just wanted to see where you stood on that. I know we have plenty of discussion about Bennington, and I wanted to put you on the spot there a little bit. But talking about awards, Josh, let the people know we're going to give a refresher, and we're going to save Marty's for last because Marty is making his picks this week since he was out last week. So, Josh, tell us your Hart, your Norris, your Vezina, and why you're there. Go ahead and dive into your conference final teams and your finals teams with the champion. Go ahead, win ready.
Right, I've got my notes written down here. So for the Hart, I've got baby. Kucherov. For the Norris, I've got Theodore, kind of a wild card. Vezina, I've got Hellebuyck. Eastern Conference, New Jersey, Boston going into it. Western Conference, I've got Dallas and Vegas. And for the finals, I'm seeing New Jersey and Dallas, and I've got New Jersey winning it all, even though they had a kind of a rough week. But the score tonight tells me they kind of turned it around. I watched Jack Hughes land flat on his ass in front of his own goal. But
I think he tried to initiate the hit, if I recall correctly, and I think he got the back shoulder and sat on his ass, and I don't think he was too happy about it.
He very well did. I forget the gentleman's name that laid him down, but I'm pretty sure I heard this is Sparta after he laid him down. I saw a couple memes and they were pretty good. But New Jersey, they kind of had a rough week after we hyped them up last week. I'm not down on them yet. There's a whole lot of hockey left to play. But yeah, those are my picks.
All right, Ron, go ahead and dive into yours, big dog.
Well, I have Panarin for the Hart Trophy, and he's been sitting second seat to Mark Stone. We talked about him, the KG veteran Mark Stone. He's actually 2 points ahead of him, but I still feel pretty good about that pick. Cale Makar for Norris. We talked about him enough. I don't think I need to say anything more about him. He's second behind Stone in assists. So Stone is leading the lead in points and assists right now. None of us took him. None of us thought this old grizzled veteran would be there. But Makar's obviously doing what he does. And then for my Vezina, I had Jake Ottinger, and we talked about that earlier. I still feel really good about that. I think he's playing well. All four of my teams going to the conference finals, I feel really good about. In the West, I have Dallas and Winnipeg. Those are the top two teams in the West. And in the East, I have Florida and New York. Again, two of the top teams in the East. And I have the Rangers playing the Stars in the finals with the Rangers winning the Cup for the first time in 30 years.
Hey, I love all of that. And to keep the ball moving, I'm going to dive into mine here. For the Hart, I have Jack Hughes, who we just talked about, just got laid out by himself earlier, was not great. But I do think if the Devils are going to be as successful as we all think that they can be on this network, I think he is the centerpiece of that. So that is why I made that pick. And my Norris, I have Adam Fox, who I think is as consistent as it gets as a defenseman. I'm a huge fan of him. All of the guys here on this network know I talk about Adam Fox frequently. Big fan of his. And to stay right there, my Vezina winner, pair him up, is Igor Shesterkin. I have a guy that we have not talked about on this show so far this week. I could go on for days about how I think Igor Shesterkin is arguably the best goaltender in the league. I would put him in the same category as Connor Hellebuyck. That's just me personally. I would put him above Jake Ottinger. And I do think, in my opinion, it's a 1-2 race with Connor Hellebuyck and Igor Shesterkin. I made a case last week why I thought that was Shesterkin turning down that massive contract. I think at this point in time, he now has a bigger point to prove. So I really think he needs to find it. Didn't play the best again the other night. He, to me, right now, is lacking the consistency piece because he's going to come out and give you a shutout or a one-goal game, or he may come out and give you 3 or 4 that probably shouldn't have got through. But I think down the stretch, I think he finds it. I think he will find the consistency, and I think he is as solid as it gets fundamentally. My conference finals, in the East, I have Jersey and the Rangers. In the West, I have Dallas and Edmonton. I will be honest with you. There is a part of me that has some concern for Edmonton, but I still had that concern last week, and I wiped it away with backing it up with, guys, this team is as talented as it can get. I mean, you can almost rattle off this whole team's roster. They just need the goaltending to be consistent for them. They just need the goaltending to be a step above average, and they'll be okay. They need Stuart Skinner to be better than a .89 save percentage, and I think they're going to be okay. I think Draisaitl and I think McDavid are two of the best in the business. McDavid is the best in the business. I'll die on that hill if anybody has anything other to say than that. I really think that they can ride them to the end. But with that being said, my finals is the Rangers and Dallas, and I do have Dallas winning it all. And another team, like I talked about last week, you can go top to bottom on this Dallas Stars team. All the guys here on this network are also high on Jake Ottinger, rightfully so. Very, very solid team. And I would love nothing more than to see Ottinger, I tried to combine their names, Ottinger and Shesterkin going at it night in, night out in a Stanley Cup Finals. How fantastic would that be? Would be the best case scenario for me, but I think Dallas can get it done.
Hey, Collin, don't worry too much about Edmonton. At this point last year, they had less points than what they have now. They had an awful start last year, so
yes,
don't write them off too quick. Stick to your guns. I think they're going to have, their ups and downs, but I do like that pick.
4-4-1 is not a great start, but when you're coming off the Stanley Cup hangover and how it ended and how emotional that was, they're fine. They're fine. I'm pretty sure we wrapped it up earlier. I think they got a win tonight, and they'll find it. You're right. I'm sticking to my guns, and I'm not going to hop off that. But man, your Winnipeg pick is very, very enticing for all the obvious reasons right now.
16-0 in their last 16 regular season.
I did not know that stat.
Yeah.
Actually, that is unbelievable. So, Marty, the floor is yours for you to make your picks. If you took anything from this episode, I don't know who you had in mind, but put Winnipeg in it if you didn't, because this is awesome run they're on. But Marty, take it away.
Yeah, so my picks here, I'm going to go for the Hart Trophy. I'm going to go and give that to Cale Makar. I think he's one of, if not the best player. I mean, it's hard. You got McDavid out there. You have some great hockey players out there. He's starting to get in this elite status where I think he can start running for the Hart Trophy, I guess is what I'm trying to get, because winning a Hart Trophy is pretty hard in the NHL. It's a tough trophy to win, and you have to be just a spectacular hockey player to even be considered for that award, and I think he's getting there. That's going to be my pick for the Hart. I think he can.
Let's look something up before we move on. But
sure.
One of us in the background while Marty makes these picks, let's look up and see how many defensemen have actually won the Hart Trophy throughout the history of the NHL. That would be a fun stat to look up. Not to cut you off, Marty. Just want to look that up real quick and see what the actual chances are that this can happen. But hey, continue on, bro.
Yep. And so I'm gonna have him for my Hart Trophy. Now the Norris Trophy is tough for me. You would naturally think that if Cale Makar is going to win the Hart, he's going to win the Norris, which is probably true. But I'm just going to go and change it up a little bit here, and I'm going to go with somebody who's just a personal favorite for me. I always liked him as a hockey player, and I'm going to go with Alex Pietrangelo to win the Norris. So I know that's saucy. I know that's weird. He's always been a streaky defenseman. He can get points in bunches. I think he could go out there and possibly win the Norris. I think it's probably unlikely, but I still like him enough to where I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Hey, Collin.
Yep.
I got the answer for you, boys.
Hit us.
7 defensemen have won the Hart Trophy, and the last one to do it was the St. Louis Blue.
Chris Pronger.
Bingo. In 2000, I believe. Let me bounce over again. I think it was in 2000.
Chris Pronger was the last one.
2000. It's rare for a defenseman to win it, obviously, but there's 7 guys. 7 guys have done it. Obviously, Bobby Orr did it, and then Pronger did it, and those are the last 2.
That's insane. Wow.
That is awesome. Marty, if this happens, this is
What's
monumental, and you heard it first here
well,
on Deep Threat Sports Network. I'm not throwing shade. We don't like
well,
talk
I mean,
on
what
this
do
show.
you think?
We
It's that
love
crazy?
bold picks.
Do you think it's impossible? I certainly think it's somewhat probable.
It's very
possible.
probable. He's on the right team. The only thing, and I'm just gonna, this is just off the cuff. The only thing I think that would possibly hurt him at winning that is he is on the same team as Nathan McKinnon, and I think if they are on all cylinders and they all are looking good enough where Cale Makar could win it, I don't see how Nathan McKinnon probably couldn't be right there in that conversation. Just thoughts in my head, but
Sure.
I mean, Cale Makar is a top 5 talent in the NHL, in my opinion.
He's capable of winning it.
Yes.
I think like we have to really look at Mark Stone in the season he's had thus far. He is just killing it. You don't think he's gonna do it, Marty?
I don't like Mark Stone. I'll be just straightforward with
Okay,
it.
well, that's
This wasn't
fine.
a popularity question.
I don't like his hair. I don't like his face.
Hey,
I don't like his stupid goatee or his beard. I don't like anything about him.
I don't think he can sustain what he's doing.
No.
Because what he's doing is incredible. But Cale Makar is young. He's talented. I actually love the pick, Marty. I think it's a great pick, and I think
I do too. He has to stay on the ice. He has to stay on the ice.
Gotta stay healthy.
Sure. So for my Vezina, though, this is going to be no surprise to anybody. We've already talked about him, but that's going to be Jake Ottinger. Like I could go into detail again, but I want to keep it short. He's got all the tools to do this. There's absolutely no reason why he couldn't. I'm just expecting him to make that next step. We'll see if I'm right. We'll see if I'm wrong. Maybe he's not ready for it. I do think has the ability to be a Vezina winning goaltender if he continues to develop. No reason why you shouldn't think that. Plus, he's playing in front of a pretty good team. That's going to help you out. You need to have a lot of bounces. You need to have a lot of stuff go your way. I think he's poised and ready to make a run at a Vezina run here. So he's my pick for the Vezina. Now, this is where it gets pretty tough for me when it comes to I'm notoriously hesitant a lot of time to make just picks at the beginning of the year about how season's going to play out because I think there's just injuries and momentum is such a thing. It's just hard for me to do this, but
give the people what they want, Mark.
I'll give them what they want.
People what they
sons
want.
of bitches. So in the East, I got Florida and New York, and I think that, like Ron had talked about earlier, he's looking for he's looking for somebody to come and get the Panthers, and I'm under the same mindset. Until somebody proves to me that they can be beaten, I think they're going to be a Stanley Cup threat all season long.
Yeah.
However, I do think the New York Rangers are going to beat them. I think the New York Rangers are a very good team. And we talked about this earlier too. It's going to rely on Shesterkin because when you have that level of a shutdown goaltender and he performs, it's going to be tough to win 4 games in series like that. So I expect them to win. So I have them going to the finals. And then in the West, it's just really hard for me. I'm going to pick the Dallas Stars, but who they go up against, I've been throwing back and forth in my head. I'm going to actually go with
do it.
Vegas Golden Knights. It's tough. It's tough for me because it's not that I dislike the Vegas Knights. I just had a hard time with how good of a lottery draft they got and just set themselves off on a torrid pace from as soon as they got in this league. They didn't have to suffer at all. They've gotten.
Don't you hate Mark Stone? Don't you hate Mark Stone?
I don't like Mark Stone, but I mean, I can even go further with this. You know, at one point I liked the Raiders, and now they play there, and I really love the Oakland A's since the hat, and now they're playing there. So I mean, I really don't like Vegas in general. I don't think it's a very good sports town. That's another rant for another day. But
to be fair, Vegas has been a consistent team since they've entered the league.
They have.
I will give them.
They haven't had to struggle at all, but they're very.
They seem like they have a decent fan base. Yeah. And, you know, I mean, I can get behind that, you know.
Yeah.
I do like Vegas.
It's another thing that they have. They still have the skill set for the. Yeah,
I'll glaze myself over that.
You like it?
Helmet. Oh, my
Dude,
God.
Their intro.
I'm a purist. Their intro is cool. I mean,
incredible,
it is entertaining.
Right?
Yes. They're in the entertainment business. They're doing well.
Yeah.
But Jack Eichel, Mark Stone, I mean, we talked last week about Barbashev playing at a high level on this Vegas team. Shea Theodore, Tomas Petrangelo.
Yes.
I mean, we could sit here and rattle the name. we went into detail, Marty, last week, to your point on this, about the Vegas Golden Knights goalie tandem. Ron talked earlier in the show about how we brought up goalie tandems. You have Aiden Hill and Ilya Samsonov. Dude, you could turn to either one of them when times are getting tough for either one of them and turn to the other one and be like, hey, man, we need you right now. You know, Hill's struggling, Samsonov struggling. Go out there, put a run together, get this team back. And those guys are capable of doing that. And that's a great goalie tandem to rely on for a whole entire season. So I love the Vegas Golden Knights pick. I really do. I have no shade on that pick at all. I just think that
I agree with
all
everything
of our
you
picks
said.
are so hard.
Yes, they
hard
are
to make that side.
When you look at that team on paper, I fully expect them to have success. Then anything outside of at least making it to, the conference finals would be, a loss for them. So I have Dallas playing Vegas, but I have Dallas winning, and I have Dallas going to the Cup against the New York Rangers, and I have the New York Rangers taking it. I do think that Dallas, because I couldn't understand it for a lot of years, because I didn't feel like that was a team that did too much different. They didn't make drastic changes within their organization, but they got great results as time went on. They developed well as a franchise, and their core's getting a little bit older when you look at players like, JB Ben. But I think that they've just proven that if you stick with the system and you learn, if you can play with the same players as long as possible, it's only going to be beneficial if you have that luxury from a franchise standpoint. And they've played together, a lot of those players, for a long time. And you're starting to see them really put together solid seasons. I think they're Stanley Cup bound. Do I think they're ready to necessarily win a cup? It's possible, but I think the Rangers are going to beat them. And that's just my early season.
They are ready. They are ready, and here's why. They are past the core on this team. They are past the Jamie Benns of the world. And I'm not discrediting, the Jamie Benns and the Tyler Sagans of the world. But, dude, we're talking about a team that has tons of young talent. And Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, Wyatt Johnston. I mean, we did this last week, this same exact thing, because if you look at our notes right now, and we did not talk about this before we ever started recording on this show, every single one of us had the Dallas Stars in the finals for a reason. Yeah. For a reason. Jake Ottinger, the young talent, you pair that with Tyler Sagan, Jamie Benn, who are not the forefront of that team no more, but they can be there on the back end.
Yep. And if I'm being completely honest,
unreal.
If I'm being completely honest, this is a team that snuck up on me because I had seen those players over the years when they were younger, and I didn't see them enough to know how they were developing. So that's why, as they continue to do better, I was always a little bit surprised. Apparently, all those players, they've developed those players very well in that organization. So yeah, I think they're an elite team, or they're headed to a deep playoff run. I just have them going to the finals.
Love it.
Two of you guys picked the Rangers, and I like a lot of New York teams. I'm a Mets fan. I'm a Rangers fan. I like the Bills. I have some friends, some family members that come down from New York for when the Blues meet the Rangers here in St. Louis. They come down, they get a box, So I do like the Rangers.
Well, let us know. Deep Threat Sports Network will be in that box this year.
Coming to you live from the box, from the suite.
So hear me out. What's the odds for New York right now? Collin, you're the betting man. You're the gambling man. Pull it up. There he is. He's right there. He's right on it.
Come on, fire it off. Get quicker. You got to be quicker than that, Collin. Come on,
man.
I need these. 650, 600 or 650, I believe.
Let me pull this up real quick, Josh, if you want to continue on, because the odds change daily due to games.
I'm thinking, since two of you guys picked New York, and I do like New York, but I don't have them going to the finals because I'm just a New Jersey fangirl, and I'm just trying to live up the dreams of my youth right here. Why don't we all put like $25 on New York to win the whole thing and ride it out all season long? And that'll give us something
Josh,
to root for.
I'll do it.
If we can talk you in to the Rangers out of Jersey, that would put all four of us at the Rangers-Dallas Stanley Cup. So why don't we just talk you into the Rangers over Jersey, and we do an exact matchup of the Rangers versus Dallas, and we really put our money where our mouth is, and we ride that train. Because the way it sits right now,
they're all getting knocked out first round if we do that. They're all getting knocked out first round if that happens.
I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling that.
It will not work.
I will still bet the money on the Rangers.
But we all believe in Dallas even more the way it looks on our show.
But for entertainment purposes, I kind of like to be able to be like, I told you, you know.
Well, I guess. But so let me read you the updated odds because we did that last week too, and I think this should be a normal segment at the end of our show. Let's rehash the Stanley Cup odds and see how we feel. Front runner is still the Edmonton Oilers at plus 800 as it sits. Number 2, tied at 2, we have 2 teams, the Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars. So we have seen Toronto slip out of that number 2 spot and leaving it to the Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars. At number 3, we have 2 teams tied. That would be your Toronto Maple Leafs and the New York Rangers. So all of our picks sit currently tied in the top 3. And Josh's pick with the Devils currently sits in, that would be 6th place at plus 1,400. So all of our picks are sitting in the top 6 as it sits right now. And I'll be honest, I can see a case for any of the teams that we have picked. I really can. I can see a case for any of the teams in the top 6, in my opinion, other than Toronto at this point. And I don't want to kick them while they're down. But let's call a spade here. They do not have success in the playoffs. They could be the best team throughout the regular season every time. And kind of like Ron said earlier, until Florida gets off their horse, I'm not knocking them off of it. And until Toronto can prove me otherwise, Ron will tell you right here, right now, I have put money on Toronto the last 3 years. And every year he tells me, I don't know why you're doing it. They can't get back. I mean, I'm done. I've moved on.
They're snake bitten, man.
Yeah, they are.
I have moved on from that. So they're not showing me anything right now to be in this top 6 conversation. And I'm really surprised that they are. Another team that we haven't talked really at all about on this network is the Carolina Hurricanes, and they sit in the top 6 as well. And they're a team that we may be overshadowing a little bit. I think the road's tougher for them than it is these other teams.
I agree.
But, I mean, they're a solid team as well.
They've struggled the last couple of years with that first round in the playoffs. They really have.
Yeah,
and
I like them as an organization. I love the coach,
too.
Of course.
I love them as an organization. They have some really good goaltending. It's just they get in that first round, and did they get swept in the first round? They were the number 1 seed last season.
Last year, I think they made it to the second round.
Yeah,
the year
was it
before,
the season before?
Tampa swept in the first round. Yeah.
So to kind of wrap this up, fellas, we've gone on long again, but I mean, we bring. I'm not trying to sound biased here, but we bring such good content. We bring such detailed conversation that, man, we're giving you 1 episode a week. So if you don't like the link, pause it and resume it because you are missing out if you're not tuning into this whole thing. But I'm going to wrap this up every week with I have a featured segment I'm going to do myself. I'm going to bring you a fantasy hockey player that's under 40% rostered in ESPN leagues that I think you should have your eyes on. And I'm going to bring you a buy-sell bet on the conference or the Stanley Cup champions. We're kind of talking about it right now. And my sell, I just hit on it, is the Toronto Maple Leafs. I'm selling them at plus 1,000. I don't think the odds are good enough on them as it sits. And the team that I am going to buy on with where their odds sit right now, I am going to buy. Ron has fully talked me into this. I cannot believe they sit this low. I am going to buy the Winnipeg Jets at plus 2,000 as it sits right now. How are you going to tell me we have an undefeated team in the NHL right now and they're sitting at plus 2,000? That to me is wild. So that is my buy and sell on the Stanley Cup. Now, my fantasy hockey player that I'm going to bring you to wrap this all up is Victor Arvidsson, a guy that many people don't talk about much anymore on the Edmonton Oilers. A guy that is getting over 15 and a half minutes of ice time a night on a great hockey team. A guy that is very consistent on a thin right wing position in fantasy hockey. For all you fantasy hockey guys out there, know that right wing can be tough at times. I think he is surrounded by talent. I think he is a guy that could really make some moves down the stretch. And I think he's really kind of coming into his own. On the 25th against Pittsburgh, he had 3 assists in 1 night. So, I mean, he's proving that he can move the puck and still score points. And like I said, he is on a very solid hockey team that is playing at their worst right now. And when they start to take off, he is the guy that will take off with them. So I like the Victor Arvidsson ad here. He's a little lower on the rosters. I think he's rostered in 38.7% of ESPN leagues. So keep your eye out on him. And if you missed out on him, that's your own damn fault. It may be too late next time we talk. But, fellas, if we don't have anything else to add here, if you do, chime in now. If not, we're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up and set our sights on to Week 4 of the NHL season.
Great show, boys. Excellent stuff.
All right,
Love it.
fellas. Well, hey, this has been tons of fun. I cannot tell you seriously how ecstatic I am that all four of us are on the panel for the NHL show on Crease to Crease here. All bring different outlooks, all bring different takes. This is awesome. All of us know our shit, and we dive deep into it here on Deep Threat Sports Network. Once again, this is Crease to Crease. That's Ron. That's Marty. That's Josh. Be on the lookout. We're going to try to come to you as often as we can every week on Sundays. We will get these episodes out as fast as possible so you guys have the full week outlook. Pay attention to our socials. Follow us on X at DT_sports_. TikTok, Deep Threat Sports Network. Facebook, Deep Threat Sports Network. Instagram, Deep Threat Sports with a Z. Spotify at Deep Threat Sports. YouTube at Deep Threat Sports. Fellas, tons of fun. Can't wait to see you all again next week. Hey, until then, go Blues, baby. Next time, fellas.
Blues.
See you, boys.
Yep, see ya.
See you guys.